Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we are back today with another Earth Story release. This time we have the Mammoth, and this one looks pretty fun. Again, definitely loving all of these incredibly cool prehistoric mammal figures. Let's see if finally, after we looked at the Smilodon, we saw that there was information that was definitely not associated with the Smilodon on it, but as we can see, we actually do have the correct information for the Mammoth, but still the really crazy misspelled words and stuff on this. But you can see again that the box art looks just as it did for the others. We can obviously see that we've got like the Mammoth here on the front, the Earth Story logo, and then all of the usual stuff, the Earth Story logo and everything on each of the different sides. And then here on the back, another shot of the Mammoth, and then some information as well as some slightly different images over here. So let's get this box open and check it out. So here is our Woolly Mammoth, and it's honestly a pretty cool looking figure, but there is definitely one thing that I'm not a big fan of, and I can say that straight out of the gate. The figure has a random shine to it, like a kind of a satin shine, and I don't know why you would want that for a Woolly Mammoth. I can only assume that this mammoth is just really wet, so maybe it's got a shine because it's soaking wet at this point in time, but the shine that this has going on just doesn't seem to look too good to me. But if we bring it nice and close and we take a look at it, you can see the head sculpt is pretty nicely done. We've got some nice looking fur detail, as well as a good bit of variation of color with lighter and darker shades of browns, as well as some blacks. You can see the black kind of circles around the eye and then heads up here into the trunk, but doesn't actually lead into the trunk. Kind of ends actually right here as we reach the tusk. And then as you lead into those tusks, you can see they as well are sculpted pretty decently. There's not a whole lot when it comes to really fine detail, but you wouldn't really expect there to be too much. You can see that we start out with this kind of like light brown wash that they've applied, and it transitions to sort of like that ivory tone as we lead out into the tusks, and they look okay. Again, maybe not the most natural transition between the brown into the ivory, but it looks all right for what it is. The actual wash that they've used as well is like very obviously paint on the figure rather than actual coloring of the tusk, and you can see the same there. Like there's a little sloppiness of the brown leading down into the tusk, but I've seen much worse. Leading down through the course of the trunk, you can see that as well is pretty decently sculpted and painted with some different variations of browns. We can see the inside there. No pinkish tone. I kind of expected there to be a pink in there. Sadly, no. But you can obviously see again that like satin shine is just overbearing on this figure for no reason whatsoever. I definitely did not see that one coming, but as you look at the head sculpt over here, you can see again everything looks pretty decent on this side as well. The fur detail looks quite nice. We can see the ear. The ear is painted with a darker variation of color as well. As we lead up here into the back of the mammoth, we do have that darker tone moving along the back, along the spinal column, and again the fur detail looks really nice. It's absolutely as shaggy as it gets when it comes to the fur, and it's nice to see the detailing looking so good on the figure as far as how crisp it looks, considering the Smilodon had kind of muted detail. So it's nice to see that the detail on this one is much more crisp than the Smilodon was. Though I still feel like this one could look better if they had applied a wash of some kind. The coloration, the paintwork just kind of looks a little flat, a little dull on it. It just needed a little bit extra to kind of crawl in and out of all of those bends and folds of the fur to really help highlight it and just kind of take it up a notch in realism. But as you lead down, you can see the fur becomes a lot more fine, not necessarily super fine, but finer as you lead down into the legs. There isn't any sort of nail paint for the mammoth, unfortunately. It's just the brownish tone of the body leading down. We can very clearly see that this is in a walking position as this leg is currently picking up off of the ground. Leading back into the stomach, again, tons and tons of shaggy fur, as well as some different variations of lighter and darker shades of brown, even some fur kind of hanging off down here, and you can kind of see how it's like all bunched together because both legs are so close together right there. Leading up here to the back, again we continue to have that very shaggy look, especially the further up into the mammoth you get, and then leading down along the rear leg here, you can see that is pretty much supporting the entire back part of the mammoth. So I'm sure if there wasn't so much fur, we would see some serious tensing going on in this leg. But moving down into the foot sculpt, again, it looks pretty nice. The nails have some decent detail. I just really wish the nails were painted. Leading back here behind the mammoth, you can see the tail leading out and curving. It does transition to a nice black tone, or or a really dark brown for the end of the tail. And you can obviously see, actually, first of all, the undersides of the feet are sculpted, which my camera does not want to focus on. There we go. Not super highly detailed, but there is some detail down there. But you can obviously see that the mammoth looks like it's really moving, like it definitely has almost like a running sort of a look, which is pretty surprising. I honestly don't know if I've ever seen a mammoth posed in that way. Normally it's just like a standing or a walking pose, so it's kind of cool to actually see it look like this. You can really get a good sense of how wavy the fur is on this side as well. Like it looks shaggy as can be, especially leading off of the stomach right here and then leading down as you lead into that leg. You can see again the leg is looking pretty decent as far as the sculpt, and just, you know, it really needs more paint work. I feel like that would definitely be the biggest and quickest way to improve the figure, because overall, sculpt-wise, it's fairly nicely done. It's not the best mammoth I've ever seen, but it just really needed a little bit more paintwork, like a wash of some kind to really help highlight the detail, or even some dry brushing. The eyes are also painted really nicely on this one, as we have what appears to be like almost like a mixture of like an off-white with a little hint of orange in there, and then a black pupil, and it actually has a nice gloss coat to it, which you can see shining right there with the light hitting it, which is much better than the kind of awkward looking eyes we had on the Paraceratherium. But overall, that is actually a pretty nice mammoth. I just wish it didn't have that weird gloss coat. As far as the size goes, I turned it around because I really wanted to get out here to this rear leg. You were looking at about 9 inches, like just a hair under 9 inches, or 23 centimeters in length. And then for a height to the top of the head, a tiny little hair over 4.5 inches, or just a little bit over 11.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovisaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our mammoth here. And as you can see again, it's right there in the same similar size range as all of the other figures have been. The mammoth does definitely have some pretty significant body mass to it though, which kind of makes it feel a little bit bigger, but I would think it's probably right there in the same size range. So to kind of test that theory, here we have the mammoth and the Smilodon, and every single time I bring this Smilodon in and compare it to one of these other figures, for some reason the size is so shocking to me. Like, it just feels so unnatural to be so large next to these other figures. But clearly you can see again they kind of all sit in the same size range. Like that mammoth and the Smilodon are pretty close to the same size. And of course we'll see the same thing here with the Paraceratherium, which is just slightly taller but still kind of similar in size. And then when it comes to a mammoth comparison, here we have the TNG version, which you can see is just a little bit smaller than our Earth Story version. But you can see one thing right there with the TNG version. Look how nice it looks when it comes to having like a dry brushing over the fur and, you know, just more impressive paint apps. It really just makes the figure look so much better. I really feel like Earth Story could definitely benefit if they started doing stuff like that. We also have the Steppe Mammoth from Eofauna again next to our Earth Story Mammoth, and you can very clearly see they're kind of similar in size. And just like we did previously, again the Dinotherium from Eofauna jumping in here for a comparison, showing you again kind of similar in size. And then the final Woolly Mammoth comparison, maybe the most humorous overall, we have the Invicta version of the mammoth next to our Earth Story version, which obviously pretty massive difference in size here. So this brand new Earth Story mammoth figure is pretty decent, but definitely has room for improvement. Sculpt-wise, I do like it. I think the detailing looks pretty good. Maybe, again, not as highly detailed as I'm used to with most modern-day figures, but still pretty good. The detailing does look kind of odd and awkward in certain areas, but again, I feel like had they given it a more realistic paint job, it could have looked a little bit better and really would have brought the detail out in a more realistic way. The coloration is decent enough, like there's a good bit of variation of color throughout, and is mostly just different variations of lighter and darker shades of browns, but I think it looks pretty good overall as far as the actual coloration used. Again, it's fairly natural and realistic, and I like that we have like a darker look for the head and then a brighter look as we lead back into the body. It just needed a little more, like dry brushing or washes or something to just make it look less flat. But the pose is also really cool. Again, the almost like a running pose that we have for this mammoth looks really neat and is quite different from most mammoth figures that I've seen, and it really shows off, again, especially on the side where the legs are spread further apart, really shows off the shaggy look that this mammoth has going on. And on top of that, it's got a pretty decent size to it. Again, it's not gigantic, but impressive enough in size, and the fact that it is a solid figure tells you that, again, it's got some pretty impressive weight to it and has a fairly high quality feel. I just really wish, the one thing I wish I could take away from this figure would be the satin shine that it has going on, because it looks awkward, we'll just put it that way. But overall, it's still a pretty cool figure. Just like I've stated before, though, I got this figure from my good buddy Dino Mike Max, so I don't really know exactly where you can grab it quite yet, but once it is available, I will update the description to let you guys know, so make sure you check back for that. And if you do find this in the meantime, just pick it up, because it is pretty cool. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.